Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Saturday Morning D&D show. My name is Jordan with a silent PH in the middle, and I am joined always by my wonderful co-host, Sir Lucian, over at Sir Lucian Gaming. Say hello, sir.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another Saturday morning. We are so close to December. It's crazy. This is the last Saturday of November. Hope you had a good one.
Yeah, no, and hope you had a good Thanksgiving. We have a special guest here on the Saturday Morning D&D show. All the way from the other room, we have this little guy here. We have little baby Oliver.
Look at that.
Hey, buddy. How you doing? He wanted to say hi last week. Oh, I should hold him out of the mic stand. He wanted to say hi last week, but he was a little cranky. But he's doing better today, aren't you, buddy? Yeah. Whoa, I'm top heavy. I'm a great dad. All right, we're gonna let him go back to mom, and we will continue. But thank you so much, my wife, for letting me show off my baby.
Her baby.
Her baby, yeah, that's true. Our baby, we'll say that.
There you go.
We are a Dungeons and Dragons show, and we talk about all things D&D and the games that we play. And there is a bit of news and information in the world of Dungeons and Dragons that we would like to talk about now that we're all distracted by babies and what have you. Mm-hmm. But first, did you have a good Thanksgiving, sir?
I did.
Did you play every single game for Thanksgiving?
No, I did go through my Steam library a little bit, but yeah, Thanksgiving for my family is all about just kind of hanging out with just the immediate family, not going out and doing a lot of things. I know a lot of other people like to travel and visit, and they do big dinners and all those kind of crazy movies that kind of show you that kind of stuff. But for us, it's kind of a solo act where we just kind of stay home with each other and hang out and have a whole week and get stuff done here at the house, which is nice.
Yeah.
And it's really always refreshing at the end of the year to kind of have something like that where you have 3 or 4 days of just not a lot of extra stuff going on. So it was really good for us. Really good battery recharger.
That's awesome. Yeah. With the new baby, we were very set on not doing anything crazy for Thanksgiving. So my family went somewhere else, and then other family went somewhere else. And so we were left alone, but it's exactly what we wanted. And we just had a nice watching movies and taking care of Oliver, and it's great. So we had a great Thanksgiving. It was nice.
Next year you'll be planning a birthday party just before Thanksgiving.
Exactly.
So now you've got 2 big things happening right at the same time there.
No, the end of the my birthday's in October, and now we got a November birthday, and then you got Christmas. It's just that's an expensive 3 months. Yeah.
So, but yeah. Dungeons and Dragons, there's so many things going on. Well, not really, but I thought it was a pretty good week. I thought it was a good news week.
No, I'm trying to open my Unearthed Arcana because we got another Unearthed Arcana. They're just pumping these out like crazy.
Yes.
And this one was on Psionics. Now have we seen Psionics before, or was it just the Mystic Blade that I'm thinking of?
I think this is probably their 3rd run at it, in a very different run. In some of the other things, you would get a UA article and they might be similar. So you might get Artificer and then you get Artificer again, and they're kind of similar, but some things are changed.
Right.
The Psionics piece has always been, let's try it this way. Let's try it mechanically this way, completely different. And here's a 3rd one. Let's try it mechanically this way, as if they're feeling out the best way to introduce Psionics. So I think it's clear they want Psionics. I think they're just trying to figure out what's the best way to put it into 5th edition. You know, they're trying the different ways. So what'd you think of it?
Okay. So just to be clear for everybody, they released 3 psionic subtypes for the fighter, rogue, and wizard. The fighter seems fine. I didn't really feel like he was super psionicness, I guess. I don't know, but it's kind of like you have to reflavor things. So you get Mage Hand as a cantrip, and you can cast it without components, and your hand is invisible. So basically you can levitate stuff with your mind, a lot like the Gith. And then you got some other interesting things, increase your attack power and things like that. It was okay. The Psychic Warrior was okay. And then the Roguish Archetype, which was, it just says Roguish Archetype, I guess I'm looking at it. But you get a Soul Knife, and I thought this was really cool. You're kind of like, what's that what's that X-Men that has like the psionic blades in her hands? I can't think of her name.
Yeah. It was right
Psylocke?
there, and then when you said it, it's Psylocke. There you go.
Psylocke. There you go. So it reminded me of Psylocke, and I kind of like that idea of having these bonus action. I can summon these weapons with me at all times. I guess I'm a sucker for that because I like the Warlock that can do that, where you can summon a weapon, and I like my Eldritch Knight, where I can throw a weapon and then bonus action have it reappear in my hand. That's just kind of a fun idea that I'm waiting for a campaign where they're like, hey, no weapons are allowed in this building or this town, and you're like, oh sure, and you hand over your weapon, and then when a fight breaks out, you like summon it into your hand, and it's just awesome.
I am a weapon.
Yeah, exactly. So it was really cool. Again, a couple of little like Psionic stuff, kind of all revolving around the blade, but like later on you could remine. But what I really liked was the wizard arcane tradition of Psionics. It wasn't over the top or anything. It wasn't like revolutionary, but it put into perspective that you can do a lot in D&D with themed abilities and spells. And it seemed with the path for wizard is they were saying like, listen, you're technically a wizard. You can select from any spell, but if you want to be a psionic wizard, you really should focus on these spells that have a psionic theme to them, or spells that are easy for you to change into being a psionic ability. So like Mage Hand, or like probably not Fireball, but like Dominate Creature or Suggestion or things like that. And I do this a lot with my characters because I think it's really fun to make like a themed character. Like I want to make like a Spore Druid, but I'm going to take all of these Raised Dead and things like that. And you're not necessarily going to take Goodberry as a Spore Druid, you know, and things like that. And so theming your abilities around, and it got me thinking, is this the next wave of D&D where they kind of just like, yeah, we're gonna make psionics and we're gonna throw out a couple new spells like Mind Spike and things like that, but for the most part it's up to you, the players, to kind of not min-max and create the best possible character you can, but rather create a themed character that will fit into whatever mold you're trying to push your character. I don't know, because you can do this all the time. Like my Fireball's green, or I don't know, like my black tentacles are actually like vines or something. You know, you can change it up however you want, and mathematically it's still the same. But what did you think?
Kind of a harken back to when you were thinking about building Iron Man as a D&D character, and you were thematically saying, well, how does he fly?
Right.
Well, he casts the fly spell, but in reality, something pops out from his legs or his arms. He's a Warforged or something like that. So there's always that way to theme, and I like that idea that encourages the players to be creative about the spells and how they look, so that you don't have to have a tome of 10,000 spells, right? You don't have to have 50 different types of fly, where I cast fly and I get wings, and I cast fly and this one is like I'm Superman, and I cast fly and I have a stream of fire burning out down below me. Like, they don't have to make all those spells to try to cover everybody's different idea of how they're going to do stuff. They could just say, just use this thing and narrate however it's going to look. It's up to you. And I think that helps them not have to go overboard on it. So I think that's kind of where it was going. When I read it, I felt like these were very Githyanki, Githzerai based classes, almost like they kind of modeled what the Githyanki would be and the Githzerai would be. And even like a Soul Knife, which is kind of cool in there, because I think that was from a different edition too at some point. I think there was a very similar thief with psionic blades, you know, before. And that's what it kind of felt like to me. So in that respect, it felt very Gith to me. So I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. Or if you wanted to tie into Star Wars being out and some of the other things going on, I could easily see these classes being converted into Jedi Knights or Jedi Warriors or those kinds of things. If you wanted to go kind of a little bit of that route too. And you could kind of move it to a sci-fi narration if you wanted to, even though it's still fantasy based. So it gives them some options. I think this is probably the most likely version of Psionics we're going to see, because it seems like they're shying away from what everybody wants them to do, which is make Psionics its own thing, not connected to spells and spell casting.
Right.
Make it point-based psionics or make it its own system in some way, completely contained in its own. That's what I think everybody kind of keeps thinking is going to happen, because that's what they did before.
And that, yeah, I was about to say, isn't that what they did in the past? Like it was, and I'm going back to that Mystic Knight, and I think that was like points and stuff and how you did things. But I'm going back to the Forgotten Realms novels, that a lot of like the psionic abilities can mimic spells, so it kind of makes sense. And I think also that Wizards of the Coast, like, we don't want to break something that's working, and the spell system is working really well. So why don't we just, leverage that for our psionic stuff? So I don't know. It makes sense to me, but yeah, it's I don't know. Yeah. I really think they did a good job with it, and we're going to see psionics probably the next year.
I'm thinking. I think it's in the 2020 book. It's got to be at this point. But we've seen a lot of different versions. So what version are we going to see is going to be interesting. And for what setting? I mean, what setting is known for its psionics? Planescape, which I think a lot of people. Dark Sun, definitely. Spelljammer, which they always say they're not going to do. But I don't know how you don't do something where your entire community always jokes, what's the next campaign? And they all say Spelljammer. Why wouldn't you build that book? I don't get it. It's like, no, we're not going to do the most popular thing everybody says. Like, it's not the default answer is not, hey, Dark Sun's the next one. We all got, wink, wink. But it's Spelljammer. So why wouldn't you do that book?
Well,
it's crazy.
Lucian, when you're Wizards of the Coast, I mean, think of the books being released as a chocolate sundae. And they're building the foundation of ice cream and all this other stuff. And then when they're almost done, that Spelljammer cherry goes right on top and completes
at the end.
Your D&D, like everything you ever wanted in life right there. So
they're going to make us wait to the end.
Yep,
oh, them jerks.
The cherry on top. There you go.
Yeah.
But
very cool. I think I would play these characters. I was thinking of a couple of different fun ways to introduce them in the campaign. I too was very interested in the warrior or the wizard subclass of it, because it was really different as far as the mage's body transforming. And like you said, the key part of saying, we know that the optimal spell to take at third level or not third level, but the first third level spell you should take for optimal damage in an area of effect area is Fireball, and everybody should take it. But the reality is they're pushing you to say, look at the spell list and pick the things that are appropriate, not just what is the biggest damage you can get out, or what is the, what does everybody else take, And I like that, because that's how I do all of my wizards. Like, none of my wizards are optimal. All of my wizards are themed. So right now I'm playing a very elemental wizard, and the only spells he takes are very elemental, though I wanted it more lightning. So instead of taking fireballs and all that, I went the lightning based route. So shocking grasp, lightning bolt. And I wanted it to be very like it was somebody who controlled certain elements. But I also did like a desert wizard where it was all based on anything I could get with sand, or I could narrate into a sand theme. And it was I played it as a UNT, like almost like a desert rattlesnake kind of styled UNT. And it just did all these kind of cool whirlwind abilities and gusts of wind and wall of sand and all those kinds of stuff to make it really cool. And it was very thematic. Like, even if you did Bigby's hand, it was a big sand hand or something, like mold earths.
I like doing that as well. Yeah. I have a female witch that I want to play of the sand, a sand witch.
Oh, there you go. Terrible pun.
There you go.
Terrible pun. That's like the Earl of Sandwich.
Yeah, something.
Okay. So that's cool, and I think I would play it. Are you letting? I guess this is a thing, a DM question, because we're always talking about some of the articles. Are you letting UA stuff into your games? Have your players come to you and say, "Hey, we really like this article. We want to play Revised Ranger. We want to play, Psychic Warrior or whatever." If
there is an official, like if it's officially out, like the Spore Druid's now out, so I probably wouldn't say you can use the old UA Spore Druid, even though that was the one I fell in love with, and the one published in Ravnica I was not as in love with. But if they made a strong case to be like, hey, I want to use the UA version of this, I don't know, we could do it. But no, my player has been doing the Artificer. He's now level 5, and has a level 5 Artificer based on the old Artificer UA content. So now the Artificer's out, and we have had a conversation about whether he wants to, I'm going to give you the option because this is what you signed up for, not necessarily what was published. I don't want you to switch everything over. But if you want to, you can, And so I think he's leaning towards switching over to the official released stuff because he wants to play around with it some more. But yeah, we've been doing the Artificer this whole time. Same thing with my Warforged, I guess. We're going to have to make the decision of switching over my Warforged to the new Warforged stats and stuff like that. But no, I like using the UA stuff. I think although we play it, I've never once taken the surveys to be this is how I think it's doing. So I feel bad about that. But one shots and stuff, I usually leave it open for anybody who wants to try UA stuff. Go right ahead. It's cool. So
yeah, I have been doing it, but I've also been trying to remember that a lot of times the initial UA articles come out a little OP, a little over the top, because they always say they want to release them with a little bit more because it's easier for them to trim out a little bit.
Yeah.
No, it is to put out something weak and not get
back. Yeah, it's easier to pull the reins back rather than push it forward. So, and then they know okay, this is a really good ability, but it needs to be 2d4 instead of 2d6 or something like that.
Yeah.
They kind of.
So I was kind of being a little leery of that, but a lot of the players, they were big on not this last UA article, but the one just before where it was doing all of the crazy class change stuff. Yeah. And we're doing that in our Tomb of Annihilation campaign. So a lot of the players have went back and redone their spells or redone a few things about their abilities. But I'm trying to keep my wizard pretty much right from the book, right out of the book at this point. But it's interesting because there's so many UA articles out right now. You could get overwhelmed with the number of options DM wise of what's going on. And if you have 3 versions of Ranger, you have 3 versions of Artificer at this point. That's a lot to keep up with. So, but it's cool. Lots of cool stuff around the horizon. I can't wait to see what books they end up being in. Are they in a campaign book? Are they in a mechanics book that's more of like a Xanathar's Guide where they just have, here's, 5 or, 2 new subclasses for each rate or each class. And then here's some new races and here's some new mechanics for downtime or something? Or are they going to put it in, here's a campaign world and here's the classes that fit in that campaign world? Or, what are we going to get? So an advanced player's handbook or something, or I don't know. They used to do that kind of stuff back in the
day. No, at this point, I think they're going to stick with the theme of it's going to be Tom's lost notebook of something, and they're going to have a name and they're going to, tie it in like that. But whether that is, I don't know. I think we're going to get Xanathar sold really well. People want that stuff. And so people that were fans of Dungeons and Dragons, they rushed out and got Xanathars more than they rushed out to get the adventures that they've been putting out, like Tomb of Annihilation and things like that, because Xanathars has options for their homebrew games. And so I think they're working on another Xanathar type book. But it's gonna have a whole range of stuff in it for players and dungeon masters like before. But I don't know. Chris Perkins tweeted out that he's working on something to do with Ravenloft and Strahd. And it got everybody thinking they're going to make an official Ravenloft campaign setting that you can play in or something. But then this Psionics stuff comes out, which makes me think Dark Sun. But yeah, so I don't know. Who knows? But they've been, this year with Eberron, last year with Ravnica. Next year, I feel like they're going to do another campaign setting because it's kind of, it would actually be really cool if we got a legit Forgotten Realms campaign setting, because as much as the Sword Coast Adventures Guide is useful, it doesn't have a lot. It doesn't have a lot, and it's a shorter book, and they really could make an official Forgotten Realms. If you want to play in the realms, here's everything, and that would be kind of nice. But I don't think we'll see that because they're squeezing that lore and that timeline into their adventures. So yeah.
So very interesting. So can't wait to see what it is. I think we'll start to get some hints pretty soon. So those shows that are coming up in the next probably few weeks, I bet we start to see some hints of what the next big campaign setting is, or at least the next book, because they haven't told us anything yet. All the books are out that they've advertised, that they've done all the big shows about. So now they got to get us hyped for the next one. That's just how the cycle works. So thanks, Agrippa, for the subscribe on Twitch Prime. Thank you. All right, but I saw another cool thing that you put in the show notes. I think we both saw it about the same time, and I rushed over to add it to our notes, and you had already gotten there, so it's pretty good.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah. So they're making a D&D movie. I mean, Dungeons and Dragons is really popular again, and the rights left the crappy movie studio. I forget what it was, and so now they're back to Paramount, and I think Paramount can make like a. Maybe it's not Paramount. I shouldn't say that. But they're going to try and make like a legit awesome Dungeons and Dragons movie, and they want to do this. And all these people are on board with it. They got really good writers, really good directors, and things like that. They kind of are like forming the story now, the script, but it leaked a little bit that it's going to feature the Eye of Vecna. So this new, and it is Paramount, thank you, yeah. This new Dungeons & Dragons movie is going to feature the Eye of Vecna, which is really cool. We were talking about the Hand of Vecna last week with my players and things like that. That's a iconic Greyhawk item that has made its way into the Dungeon Master's Guide, so it's kind of like, you know, if it's in the DMG, it spans all campaign settings, I think. You can throw the Hand or the Eye of Vecna in that. And they talk a little bit about Vecna as being a powerful lich who turned into a god, and the remnants of his mortal thing are the Hand and the Eye of Vecna. Also interesting with this is apparently they're looking for a male actor to voice a certain dragon, a named dragon named, and I'm going to butcher this because I'm really bad at it, but Palarandusk, who is a dragon of the Forgotten Realms, and I had to look him up. He is a gold dragon that is good and has protected Neverwinter and done a bunch of other things. He's been around for a long time, since the Netheril age. He tries to keep his identity a secret. Sometimes he walks as a human. I think he had like a library in Neverwinter for a while and things like that. So he's got a whole history to him, and reminds me I should probably make a video on him, because that would be, you know, timely and interesting. But so even though Eye of Vecna is going to be Greyhawk, and a lot of people were thinking they were just going to make like a generic D&D movie, it looks now that it's going to be Forgotten Realm themed, and that they're going to have like the history of the Forgotten Realms kind of in there in some capacity, and that's the setting they're going with. So I don't know, I was really excited, and I thought that was really interesting. We're going to have, just I don't know, Eye of Vecna, cool D&D campaign. And a lot of people are speculating, well, in the article, they were speculating that, you know, if they're searching for the Eye of Vecna, that opens it up to Vecna being a boss later on for sequels to this movie. And are we going to get Dungeons and Dragons cinematic universe and things like that? So who knows what's going to happen, but
it seems like, anytime you make it, if it's a good movie, then they always definitely want to do a sequel. Sometimes even if it's a bad movie, they want to do a sequel. So I could definitely see them opening it up. And it feels like it's that time again where Dungeons and Dragons became popular enough that it really was everything. You could get lunchboxes and cereals and, you know, Saturday morning cartoons, and you were getting like D&D themed all kinds of stuff at that point, glasses and cups, and you could go to McDonald's or something and there'd be something, you know, a toy in the Happy Meal or something. So
every Happy Meal comes with a Hand of Vecna.
Yeah, and they did some shows. They've tried to do some. I want my dream is that they do a show that's very similar, like a Stranger's Thing, with that production quality and more of a series, because I feel like I'm really into the more series shows than just the movie. The movie is only 2 hours. It doesn't give me enough anymore. I'm so greedy that I want more of the show. So like when I'm watching like these things like now, like Mandalorian, or I'm watching Stranger Things, because you get 14 or 15 episodes, or, you know, all these other things, you get to dive deep into that. I'm hoping that happens at some point. Game of Thrones, we got 9 seasons of, you know, diving into that. And I would love that kind of thing for a Dungeons and Dragons, especially in Forgotten Realms, which I think would be cool, which would tie into all the books that are out right now. You could really turn it into something that more than just people who are playing the game would know about. It becomes, just a full-on world on its own, the characters that they put in there. But man, they got to do something about the names in Dungeons and Dragons, because their names are just crazy. Who's going to remember all these really weird, odd pronunciations of things that they have in all their, I don't even know how they come up with them. Is there like some funny person they use at Wizards of the Coast that just comes up with really odd names? Like, where do you get Palarandusk from?
Well,
Palarandusk.
Yeah. So
Crazy.
I have some inside knowledge. I shouldn't even really be talking about this, but they have this floor that has a bunch of letters on it, and they put down geese, and wherever the geese poop, that's when they add the letters together and they come up with the names. It's a complicated system. Yeah.
Angry geese too.
Angry geese, yes. They're always angry. There's no happy geese in the world. But no, that's really cool. And like you said, what we need to do is I guess it's baby steps. And producers always want to see what's profitable. So if the Amazon Critical Role series is super popular, and it probably will be, because how could it not be at this point? And they're doing a really good job with it. Netflix is going to look at that and be like, oh, we want to make a show. Hulu and everybody else, they're going to look at these things, and if the movie does really well, they're going to be like, well, we want to make a movie on this. What other stories could we make out of this? And then all of a sudden Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast is like, we have stories up the wazoo for this. And they might be like, well, you did a Forgotten Realms movie. We want to do a Dragonlance TV show, or we want to do this. So it's where the money is. And all of a sudden, if these properties make money, which Critical Role is going to make money because it already has made money, it made enough money on Kickstarter that Amazon said, we want to buy an extra season of this. That's the direction you have to go. You have to impress the investors, I guess. And I think they will be impressed. So if this movie does well, which it probably will, because there's good people behind it. I mean, movies can always flop. I always think of the Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern movie that had really good writers, an excellent director. Ryan Reynolds is a good star. You had all of these really good things, and then that movie was just awful. Like, it was so bad. And it was like, but you had these amazing writers, and you had this director, and so it can happen. But who knows? I'm hoping, though. I really think, like, you're like, I want this Mandalorian Netflix series. I think we'll get that at some point. Game of Thrones.
Well, thinking of some of their stories, I mean, if you think of them in a cinematic way, not as a, hey, I want to play that campaign,
right?
Or, hey, I want to write a book about that. Like, cinematically, you're going to have big visuals. Which one are you going to pick? Like, Storm King's Thunder could be a visually impressive story to tell through a series, or even a movie franchise that has several movies where you just have, because just some of the things you can do with the giants attacking big cities and heroes trying to stop giants, or working with some giants but fighting other giants, and there's a big thing going on there, and a lot of visual. I'm trying to think of like a Tomb of Annihilation. You could get like some really popular movies out there. What was the one that had The Rock eventually was it was like his film debut as the Scorpion King? What did that spawn from, though? What was the movie?
The Mummy.
The Mummy. Yeah. The original ones, like the original one. Those were really cool because they were very Indiana Jones-ish in a way. So I could see them doing a Tomb of Annihilation in an Indiana Jones theme. And that could be cinematically cool if they brought out what that would look like. What is it like visually going through this tomb? What does the lost city of Omu look like? What is the big jungle and the stuff that roams there that you can go? I mean, there are some really cool visuals you could get out of that, and it would drive a movie that could be really cool. So they have all kinds of stuff they could pull from to do very cool, real stories, not tongue-in-cheek stories, not making fun of people's stories. Not like, okay, we zoom into everybody in their basement playing, and they wearing their cloaks and their stuff, and they're rolling their dice and whatever, and eating their pizza off their boxes and all that stuff. They could really just go like, no, we're going to tell a story about this world, which is an amazing world, and show you crazy cool visuals.
You know what I want to see now more than anything is exactly what you did. Really cool world. you know, like in crazy visuals and like everybody taking it seriously and they're invested in this world. And then roll credits. And then the post-credit scene is a bunch of 14-year-olds around a table going, you know, saying, thank you, DM. That was a great story. And him being like, you're welcome. And they're like, awesome. And then you hear mom upstairs like, you want dinner? And like, that's exactly what I want. That would be so good.
So I'm excited for it. Now, do we think this is the Joe, I always say his last name, Magniello?
Manganiello?
Manganiello?
I have to see
Joe, awesome Joe. Do we think this is the project he's been pushing and getting moving forward? Is this a different project, or we think this is the one he's a part of? Then?
No, I'm pretty sure it's the one he's a part of, or he's the one that's been pushing for it. And there's been a bunch of other actors that were interested in it, like Chris Pratt, Vin Diesel, a bunch of other people are kind of like, no, I like Dungeons and Dragons. I want to be in a D&D movie. So you know, so it should be really cool. But Joe is invested in this, and he's not a producer, he's not a writer, but I think he's pushing it forward in Hollywood circles. So
cool. Well, I'm excited to see it. We're probably not a 2020 movie though, right?
2021.
2021, 2 years, people.
Script hasn't been finished, hasn't been filmed yet, but the article that I read, which I can put in chat, I guess, is a 2021 article, or they say 2021. So yeah.
Well, and it does remind me, like, the one thing that was super popular in Ready Player One, the book, was when they're talking about the VR part, obviously jacking in, and that was all cool. But what really drove that book home for a lot of people is when he jacks in, he finds that one of the clues, and sort of a little spoiler here, and they recreate in virtual reality the Tomb of Annihilation, or one of the big Gary Gygax, you know, dungeon things. Mm-hmm. And you can go and part of the story is him taking his character through that to get stuff. And I just thought that was a really cool thing. So we know it's popular, this idea of, you know, being thrown into this world and seeing it. I would love to see what it would look like visually. I would love to see, you know, a J.J. Abrams. People were putting in there, you know, like Steven Spielberg. You know, I would watch a Martin Scorsese D&D show. You know, I don't know. I would watch some crazy. Just take, you know, any of these great directors that are out right now to be able to run with something like this. A Chris Nolan D&D movie, or a Tiki Watiti. Say his last.
Taika Waititi.
Yeah, Taiko. I get them all mixed up in my head. Those would be good too. So I'm excited. I can't wait to kind of see it. Talking about videos, there was a couple of videos they put out this week on the D&D channel. If you missed them, they were the lore you should know videos, definitely based on Eberron, because we had that book just released last week or the week before at this point. It was one video on halfling and dinosaurs and how the halflings fit into the world of Eberron, and then one on criminal syndicates and how they fit into the world of Eberron. So being our Eberron aficionado, I know you did some videos on them. You're still doing videos on them. Have you done a halfling and dinosaur video yet?
I haven't. There are other continents, and I could be wrong about this, but I mean, I'm not wrong about there being other continents in Eberron. Yeah, they kind of have, the halflings have their own, I think their own area, and there's dinosaurs there, which if you buy the Eberron Rising from the Last War, there are some velociraptor type dinosaurs that are great for druids, to shape change into and things like that. So really good options there. And then I think Zendrick, something like that, is where the drow live, and they don't live underground. They live in these weird jungles with giants and stuff like that. So again, Eberron takes the races that we're all familiar with, but kind of, I mean, you have drow that are on the surface. You have like these not nomadic, but like tribal kind of halflings that ride dinosaurs and do crazy things like that. So I don't know, Keith Baker really created his own world. Like, he didn't just be like, here's another fantasy world. Like, he wanted it to be different. And so, yeah, I don't know.
And it sounded like from the part I read that it's not about the big dinosaurs. It's about the smaller size, fast, agile dinosaurs.
Yeah. There's pterodactyls
the way
that
Chris
they fly
Perkins
on and things like that. Yeah. So I didn't watch the video, sadly. I've been busy. But it was, and so there's something for everybody in Eberron, I think. You know, you got weird magic robots, and you've got halfling dinosaur people, and you've got weird tribal drow, and goblins and orcs are not necessarily evil. There's no evil races in Eberron. It's just kind of how everybody fits into society. And so the orcs are more like, kind of like World of Warcraft orcs, where they're not necessarily evil, but they're like druids and shamans and stuff. And goblins are like tinkerers with the gnomes and things like that. And so you could play a goblin, you could play an orc. And that's why Eberron released a new orc stat block that doesn't have the -2 intelligence, because orcs in Eberron aren't necessarily stupid evil brutes. They're intelligent, like connected to nature kind of creatures. So yeah,
very cool.
Really cool stuff.
Well, I think that was about all I saw for news out this week. We're still keeping our eyes open for leaks of what the new book might be. I know we're starting to get towards the Christmas season, so they've got their full catalog out for this year, and you can go out and get any of the books that have been released this year. No other book is scheduled to be released this year, I don't think. I don't remember any December release dates on anything. There's plenty of different box sets you can get right now. There's plenty of different books you can get right now to add to your D&D collection. There's dice sets, 25th anniversary dice sets. They're still putting out the spellbook cards and the minis. All that stuff's out there. Player mats and all that kind of stuff. D&D screens.
I'll also say
all
this,
that
that
stuff.
Amazon is having a sale of buy 2 Wizards of the Coast D&D books and get a 3rd free. So if you wanted to stock up on some D&D books, and I think it's most of them, they have a list of like what's available. But yeah, you could pick up like Eberron and Tomb of Annihilation and then get Ravenloft for free or something. So yeah, definitely check that out.
So other than that, one of these days I'm going to make a nice little segue screen that I can flash here to move on to our next part of the show, which is called Bardic Inspiration, or Appendix D. I think that maybe just be the whole big name of it.
Okay.
And it seemed like this was great for me because I looked at the show notes early this week and Jordan had already written something in. So something inspired him this week that he was ready to talk about. So I'm going to let him jump off. What was your Bardic inspiration? What is your GM inspiration for our community?
So this actually came from one of my players and my dungeon master. And we have a group chat that we all kind of chat throughout the week and drop D&D news and talk about stuff. And he's been listening to a band called Glory Hammer, and I had never heard of them, but he said something that, sparked my imagination, where he's like, man, each of these song titles could be the inspiration for a whole campaign. And I was like, let me go look at this. So I Google search Glory Hammer and I start looking them up. And so I wrote down like and these are song names that I was like, no, you could literally just go off this song name and have an entire campaign based off of what, be inspired by this. So I wrote down my favorites and I'm gonna read them off to you. Glory Hammer, the band, song, Infernus ad Astra. I'm not sure what you could do with that, but like demons or something, who knows? Rise of the Chaos Wizards.
I want to play in that.
I want to play that. Don't you want to play that game?
Yeah.
Legend of the Astral Hammer.
That's a good one. I could see that being a campaign.
Yeah. And then you're like, what are you doing? Oh, I got to play my Legend of the Astral Hammer game. This one I really want to play in. Goblin King of the Darkstorm Galaxy.
I like it.
And Struther's Dark Prophecy.
There's always a dark prophecy to deal with.
This is the other one I want to play in. The Unicorn Invasion of Dundee.
Oh boy, unicorns. You got to have evil unicorns.
I don't know. It's great. And then the last one, The Epic Rage of Furious Thunder. So,
that'd be so good.
Lucian always talks about you being Lucian. You always talk about being inspired by everything. But yeah, and so I just thought that was really cool. It reminded me, and I'm trying to think of the band name, and I can't think of it, but WebDM was talking about this band that he really loved, and I ended up listening to some of that, and it was just a lot of like instrumental kind of operatic music, and he got inspired, and Pruitt, I think, got inspired by that album to make his Spelljammer campaign. It's called The Swords. The band's called The Swords. I just remembered. And so, yeah, this Glory Hammer, you're listening to this and you're like, what is this called? Rise of the Chaos Wizards. Man, I'm going to go home and write that campaign, and it's going to be awesome. And we're going to have 9 Chaos Wizard lords that descended down and have oppressed the community of this area for like 9 years. And now you are rising up. You, the Goblin King of the Darkstorm Galaxy, are rising up to fight against these Chaos Wizards with your Astral Hammer. And I don't know. It's just really cool stuff using unicorns.
Yeah, I almost feel like that should be a Saturday morning D&D show on YouTube where we sit around and we take that and we actually flesh it out to say, this is the adventure we would build, just using, like you said, this title is the inspiration. Where do we take it from there? And just like do like a live stream of a campaign building. Matt Colville does them every now and then, where he does big world building, campaign building kind of streams. I could see where you could just take that as the nugget of the starting point.
Here's the title of our adventure. How do we build it from the title? You know,
how do we make
have
it
the title
awesome?
of Rise of the Chaos Wizards? Then how do we build it? That would be really interesting. It'd be fun.
Yeah,
so,
super good. That's super fun.
So that's my
like
bardic
it.
inspiration, Appendix D. And I want to just play in all of those. They're just so fun.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So for all of you out there, make sure in the comments on the YouTube video when it gets posted up on a Monday to go and put in what other song titles you have seen or you like or you've heard of that also could make probably really good D&D campaigns. We'll have to take a look at all of those because that'd be super cool. My inspiration came because of something I'm also going to talk about a little bit in my games, but the inspiration came from, or at least the idea of what happens when you build the party first and then you devise the campaign around the party. So you don't have a campaign in mind and then you gather players and say, okay, hey, we're going to play this campaign about taking on cultists or whatever. So everybody start rolling up characters and it'll be cool and try to make them fit. What if before the dungeon master even made one thought about the campaign, had not even a single idea, had the characters get together, build characters, find a way to make them all work together, and then build the campaign from that idea. And that was kind of what this was. And I thought, oh, this is a really interesting kind of thing. So here was the example that sparked this in my mind. During our Tomb of Annihilation game, there was kind of a weird downtime for some of us players while other players were doing something. And we decided just out of fun to randomly roll some characters, generate some characters from another system. I just happened to have it on my desk. So we were goofing around because we just needed to fill some time while we were waiting for what was happening. And so 2 of the players were just like, okay, we'll do it. We'll roll some dice. And when they rolled an apothecary and a pit fighter. So I was thinking in my mind, and then the adventure starts going again and everybody's playing their normal characters. But in my mind, an apothecary and a pit fighter starts rolling around there slowly. Then the night's adventure is over, and I go to lay down to go to bed for the night, and still the apothecary and the pit fighter is rolling around. I start building this amazing story about how this pit fighter works for a gladiator school, is being trained at a gladiator school, and the head of the gladiator school is an ex-gladiator who's won his freedom and now runs his own school, very Spartacus-like. The apothecary definitely has been brought in to help with a wound that this pit fighter has taken recently in one of the fights. But during this is when the leader of the gladiator school reveals to the apothecary character and the pit fighter character that his whole sole purpose is to hunt down those that had killed his family. And his family had gotten killed while he was a gladiator, and he couldn't do anything about it because basically he was a slave, and he couldn't just leave and go investigate and go find and hunt down these people. But he won his freedom, and now he's been searching and hunting, and he finds the information, and he wants these 2 to help him go and do this thing. So it's just this idea of building a intricate story around what the characters had built. And it was complete random for them what they rolled up, so I thought it was really interesting. So this idea of build your party first, have them connected in some way, find a story thread that connects those people, then as a dungeon master, take that one story thread and spin it into your campaign. Don't come into it with a preconceived ideas of what you want your campaign to be. build a campaign based off of what the players would be. What do you think of that idea? I thought that was kind of fun.
No, it is fun, and it makes me think of something that I've wanted to do, a kind of a different spin on it. But like, yeah, have everybody come and make their characters. So you're like, I have a changeling wizard, and I have, I don't know, a dwarf, this, blah, blah, blah. And then after their characters are made, lay out a battle grid and draw the map of the world and be like, where do the dwarves live? We've established that there are dwarves in this campaign because you wanted to play a dwarf. Where do they live? Where do the changelings live? Do they get along? Are there dwarf changeling societies together, kind of a thing? And then allow the players to build the world, and then they leave. That's your session 0. And then you have a week to be like, where's the conflict? How do I develop this into something interesting? And I really like that too. And then the players get to play the races and the classes they want, but at the same time, they also get to decide how their race and character fits puzzle piece into that world. Am I a Simic hybrid from Ravnica that we live in undersea dwellings that rarely come to the surface?
That's okay. You were you were just saying, putting the puzzle pieces together. So I kind of ran with the puzzle analogy.
That's exactly it. So you have like a Simic hybrid, and anyway, you get to decide how they fit into the world. And I like that a whole bunch. And so, anything that helps your players be invested in the world they're playing in is something that I really enjoy, and allowing them to help build it with you is just, that's really cool. So yeah.
Very cool. So that was my idea of bardic inspiration. And for those of you, go to the chat area and tell us about what your bardic inspiration was for this week. Also, did you have something you watched? Did you have something you read? Did you have something that you just passed by on the side of the road and it just all of a sudden in your brain just blossomed with this, oh, that could make a really cool campaign idea, and run with it? And let us know. All these little kernels that all of us can throw out there and put into the world might grow into something someday if somebody hears and goes, you know what, I like that idea too, I'm going to make a campaign on it. I'm still so into Mandalorian that I've got this big Mandalorian campaign running through my head too, especially after the last episode that we just watched, chapter 4. Oh, so good. But that leads us into our games of the week, and it looks like Jordan has just a huge big area of notes here about games he played.
Nope, I've been reading Descent into Avernus, and I have played no games because couldn't get anything going at the last minute. And it was Thanksgiving weekend, so everybody was busy. So hopefully this Wednesday or next Saturday. So
yeah, he was role playing a dad. So he's been role playing a dad, been working on his voices, been working on
jokes,
his character,
sleep,
his skills. But so I did get to play a little bit of Dungeons and Dragons. I have, we got to start with our last Saturday recap. I kind of put it out of order. But as you remember, if you were at our show last Saturday, I was talking about that later that day, I was going to be going and playing in Descent into Avernus. And so that's being run by the awesome Dungeon Master LB, who you also saw in a previous show. She's running a game at her house, sitting around a table, so it's pretty cool. And I don't know if this was true, and she's in chat, so she might verify it. But it felt like to me that maybe the party didn't do the things she thought the party was going to do. So thus, she had prepped what she thought we were going to do, and I think we did other stuff. So it's that very quintessential that I don't want to say
problem all dungeon masters face.
Yeah, definitely that we all run into, the cliche, or trying to think of another word. It's just at the tip of my tongue. But this idea that you did all this prep, you had everything ready, you really for sure thought you knew what the party was going to do, and then they take a right turn. And so things just go off the rails. So it was funny for me to sit there and think, well, shoot, I think this is going off the rails because I don't think she's prepared for what these players are trying to do. And it's funny that in this group only do I think of the players as something separate from me. I almost play like a character that's an outsider to the players themselves, but I'm always looking at the game from a dungeon master perspective too, because I like Descent into Avernus, and I'm always thinking, oh, if I run this, I want to do this little thing, and when I try to run it, and oh, this would be a cool thing that I like, or I like what LB did here, I want to remember to do something cool like that. So I'm kind of looking at it from a dungeon master's point of view, and I'm watching it unfold, this idea that I think now maybe she knew exactly what we were doing, she had all this prep, which could be very well be true, and I just misread the whole thing, but it felt like we went on a left turn and threw everything off. So I'm wondering how she's going to recover the next, because at the very end she gave my character a clue to, I think, get us back on track, like introduced an NPC that gave us a piece of information that put us back where we needed to be, because we were just like, we just didn't have any idea. And then the second thing, there's something interesting going on with the players I'm in, where a couple of them will get a plan in their mind, and they will never deviate once that plan is set. Like, no matter what you do, no matter how often you say, I don't think that's going to work, or no matter how much the DM tries to hint, hey, that's not going to happen, they keep going at that plan. Like, they're convinced this is the only plan that'll work, and we have to do this plan, and there is no other plan. And so they're just going to keep pushing it forward and keep pushing it forward because it has to work, And I'm just
we have to assassinate the king. We could talk to him. No, he needs to die.
No, he definitely needs to die. We have to figure out how to kill this person. Yeah. So I was wondering, have you run into this in any of your games as either a player or a dungeon master, where the players themselves got fixated on a single plan and didn't seem to deviate from it, just we're really only going to do that one thing? And then as a dungeon master, you're trying to think, well, I know this isn't going to work, but how do I get us moved past this? Because they are obviously not going to change what they're doing.
Yeah, no, it happened in my Hot Springs Island game, and but that's so open that I was like, actually, your plan sounds really cool. And I changed a lot of the story and the mechanics so that what they were pursuing was a viable way to win and finish the campaign. And I liked that idea about it. So, and that's the only one that comes to mind off the top of my head, but I'm sure that's happened many times. And I think I told this story a couple of weeks ago where my players had the option of going over the mountain or under the mountain, and they told me they wanted to go over, and then right before they were like ready to head out, they're like, whoa, let's rethink this. And they were then considering going under, and I'm like, but I prepped all of this stuff for you to go over the mountain. Like, you're seriously? So, I mean, it happens all the time. It happens all the time because people are people, so.
Yep. They make decisions. So I thought that was pretty funny. So that's kind of what happened in my Descent into Avernus session. So we felt like the thing was, we were trying to get information, and the way we were going about it was very ham-hocked, very, very heavy-handed. And it does remind me a little bit too of this disconnect sometimes that we have as we're hero players, and we're talking with lowly townsfolk. And lowly townsfolk should just tell us what we want because we're heroes, and we can never understand why they wouldn't tell us what we want. It doesn't make any sense. We're the heroes. Tell us what we want. Why are you not telling us what we want? But the reality of a world that's a little bit more gripped in, and I say reality, knowing we have dragons and elves and spells. And yeah, I get it. But this idea that not everybody just freely gives out information, and not everybody has the information you need. Not everybody wants to give you that information. And how do you go about it without just murder hoboing your way through the whole thing? So it's definitely interesting to see the group. And the group is really, it's a group that has this interesting dynamic of lots of players of different styles that are really different from each other. So it's not like a group where all four players are very similar, so the styles are all kind of the same and they mesh really well together. This is a group that's just like, we have a lot of different play styles and we're all in the same thing, and we're having to try to make it work, which is, and I always watch Graybeard, who's also in that campaign with me, trying to be the glue that binds the group together, because if somebody does something crazy, he's trying to figure out a way that to lessen that crazy, but to still let the crazy happen, but to make it happen in a way that the crazy will work for us. It's like, so his mind is just reeling through, how am I going to make this work when they're doing this really weird and crazy stuff that they want to do?
Yeah.
And I think it's fun. It's just a funny way to kind of look at the whole thing. It adds an extra challenge to it. So that's been really fun. Not really any spoilers there. I'm trying to stay spoiler free. I know Jordan's about to do a video on Avernus, and I can't even be able to watch it because I'll know too much then. But that'll be pretty good. It's been pretty fun, and I'm interested to see where we go. We're not in Avernus yet, so we've been doing a lot of non-Avernus stuff so far. So
in Baldur's Gate?
if you're so if you're thinking about running this adventure, be aware that there's plenty of not in Avernus stuff to do. So you don't have to worry too much about that when you do that. That'll be the only spoiler I give you. My Monday night Seeking Revenor is my West Marches 5e game. And this is the one that I've been running now. We're on like session 19. This might be the longest single group running through my West Marches. I've done a pre-campaign. I've done a version of the West Marches that I liked, and then I did a reboot of that and did just a one group. And so we're really diving into this. And they were about to go back out to the Black Pyramid. They came across the tracks of a big war band, and they realized that the war band, because they keep going after this pyramid, they keep trying to end the evil that's there. Well, the evil that's there has decided they're tired of these adventurers coming over and messing with them all the time. They're ready to go mess back. So they've sent a war band over to where the players are, tracking them down. And the players have realized there's this huge war band that's now marching on their abbey that they've created, their Abbey of St. Timor. And the adventure was them trying to follow this army, trying to figure out how many there are, what they're doing. They get in a fight. But next Monday, just in a few days, we're going to have the siege of the Abbey of St. Timor, which I think is going to be pretty cool, because I am using some of the stuff from Strongholds and Followers, and a little bit of the warfare stuff that he has in there, but not. I'm also going to do a little bit of hybrid of my own, where there's units fighting units, but then the players are out there doing stuff while units are fighting units, kind of thing. So that's going to be pretty fun. I'm excited about that. It's kind of a turning point for the campaign, as far as if they can defeat this force and they can finally put an end to this Black Pyramid. That kind of wraps up a lot of the big evils, except the overarching story, which is the story of the dragons. And so they kind of get to focus there. So that's been really fun, being able to create this world and really kind of start pushing it forward. They had an NPC that they did resurrect, which was really cool to have this idea that they liked the NPC enough that they wanted to resurrect him. So that was always cool as a GM to see that, because I was just ready, I didn't have any one way or the other care, but they were really attached. So I thought that was cool. And then we played Tomb of Annihilation on Wednesday night with our wonderful dungeon master, Danimal, who's from Australia. I always like to say I have an Australian DM also, and it's really cool. Does lots of cool voices. And this is, I only have a few minutes here. This happened, and I wonder if this has happened in any of your games. The party comes upon a room, and there's a puzzle in the room, and we're trying to figure out what's going on. One of the players tries something and disappears. We're thinking, uh-oh, he's been teleported somewhere else. And now we're thinking, part of our group's here, that person's there. How long do you wait to see what happens for that player? Or do you send somebody else in, or do you send all the party in, or what? Do we all go to our desks? Do we just let one person go to their desk? So we send another person in, and that person also disappears. And then we're like, well, we're going to wait 5 minutes to see what happens, and then we'll make a decision, because if they're not back in 5 minutes, something's gone wrong. Well, in Dungeons and Dragons, the problem is 5 minutes is a very long time when you're talking about rounds in a fight, right? So if they're in there fighting something and they're starting at 6-second rounds, 5 minutes is an eternity. 5 minutes, you're out of the game at that point. It's relying on them. So what ended up happening is they were fighting something, and it took about 10 rounds for them to resolve. So a 10-round combat in Dungeons & Dragons is basically about an hour and a half of real time. And so what he did is he split us up, and he put us in one channel who were on the outside waiting to see what happened. And he took the other players to the other channel so that they could decide what they were going to do. In case we came in after them, we didn't know or hear what was going on, right? We didn't metagame the whole thing out. But this became a problem because now you have 3 of your players for an hour and a half not doing anything while they resolved. And he did keep coming back and say, you guys sure you don't want to do something? You want to dive in? You want to go in? You're just going to sit 5 minutes? Okay, I'm going to go back and do them. And now he goes back and they're doing stuff. And we could see their facial expressions and we can see the rolls that are happening. We're like, oh my God, what's going on? But we said we're going to wait 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And so this is where we decided we were playing our own mini game where we started rolling up characters for a whole nother game. Just in case we ever had this downtime where we were split once again, we could play our own role-playing game while we were waiting for the other things. And that's where that whole thing came from. So we were playing Warhammer Fantasy role-playing characters, and we were having people roll them up and build backstories and thinking up campaigns while we were sitting and waiting and letting the other group do it. So has this ever happened where your party split, so then you took them in different rooms or different areas so that you could work with them, but now one group's in a combat and one group's not, so now the time differential is really a problem?
I've separated people when it's like you touch this magic object and then I was like, I need to go talk to you in the other room. And we've done like dice rolls there and stuff, but I've never had like combat like that initiate.
Yeah.
I think what I would have done in that situation is I would have stuck with like, I would have stuck with you guys waiting. And I would have been like, okay, you guys are gone. You're teleported. And then the people that are waiting, I'm like, how long do you want to wait? You want to wait 5 minutes? And it's like, okay, you're waiting 5 minutes. What do you want to do now? Like nothing happens. Oh, now you want to touch it? Okay, so you touch it. And then once they disappear, I would go back to the combat, or I would start the combat and be like, you guys are in combat. And it's like, oh, we should have touched it earlier. Like, too late. You waited. And I think that's how I would have dealt with it.
That would make sense.
And
now,
so rather than
back.
jumping back and forth, I would have been like, if you want to wait 5 minutes, this is what you're doing. So that they don't think like, see facial expressions and try to metagame and things like that. So.
Yeah, that's actually a good idea. I like that. They
then
did end up coming back in 5 minutes.
Yeah, you guys could pop in at some point. So I don't know.
Yeah, they solved it, got teleported somewhere, survived, and then made their way back because they knew where we were. And then they showed up just as we were thinking about going in. They show back up from another angle, and they're like from a different hallway. And we're like, oh, you guys are back.
Yeah.
And then the running joke all week has been, why didn't you guys come in after us? Why did you just send us to? And we were just like, we were waiting. It's like 5 minutes. How long could that possibly be? And they had some huge, enormous, and it was like an epic battle. Like if you go back and watch that on Twitch, it's a battle where the bard polymorphs himself into a giant T-Rex. The paladin mounts him and then rides him around like a mount and is fighting some enormous room full of creatures. And it turns out to be an epic battle that's happening that whole night. And the rest of us were sitting in another channel, had no idea what was going on.
Yeah.
So it was pretty funny. So it was interesting. I think the two things I like is the way you solved it, which was cool. But sometimes I think it would be hard to remember in the heat of the moment when it's happening. But I'm going to try to remember it if it happens to me. Or two, have a little mini game prepared for anybody that gets separated, because your players can sit there and play a little card game. They can play, they could whip out some magic cards or something. They could roll up some characters for a different campaign, or just to play it out of the mind. Even if the campaign never runs, or even if the idea never happens, we stayed engaged, and we were telling Danimal, don't worry about it. Just go ahead and run them. We're having fun over here, goofing off with, figuring out how an apothecary and a pit fighter come together, and this whole thing. We were building up some backstories and just having a good time. So it was pretty fun. Just in case that ever happens to you, have a little mini game prepared for your players in case they get separated, because they will split the party. And we didn't try to, but it happened. It's just one of those things that happens. So that was it for me. I can't wait to see what we're going to do this week in all of the Dungeons and Dragons games that we're playing. And I'm sure next week we'll bring it to you and tell you all about it.
Yeah, it'll be December, and we look forward to talking to you next week. I believe that is our show, everybody. Thank you so much for staying. Thank you for watching. Thank you for liking, subscribing, and sharing these videos with your friends. As always, I am Jordan with Silent PH in the middle. That is Sir Lucian over at Sir Lucian Gaming, and we will see you next week with another episode of the Saturday Morning D&D Show. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.